Here's Johnny.
Hey everyone, welcome to my video. If you're new here, my name is Ben. I am a professional illustrator. I've been doing different art and painting and stuff for almost 20 years, professionally and just for fun. Today I'm working on a Shelley Duvall painting from The Shining, her character Wendy. I wanted to do a little piece after I found out she had passed away. So this video is, I believe it's sped up 30% of how fast I had originally painted it. This is a little bit slower than I would normally post, but it's because this was a pretty fast painting for me. It only took about 2 hours. I did 2 1-hour sessions pretty much, with a little bit of time prepping and with breaks in between. So this video is about an hour and a half long. I probably won't be talking the entire time, but I'm going to jump in and discuss certain parts and whatever I think is relevant. Right now, this is the underpainting that I'm starting here. I typically start on a red board. I work on wood usually. I prefer the harder surface over canvas, personally. I also think it, the way that I blend wouldn't, or I have done this on canvas, but it just doesn't really work the same way. It's a little bit, I like having a super hard surface and not having any give behind it, just for how I work. For my underpainting, as usual, I typically try to do midtones of the reference that I'm using or whatever I'm using. And just kind of block in as much color as I can. And if you can see on her shoulder, so actually the reason the red is actually important is because it builds the depth super early on, and it actually makes things a lot easier over time. For something, if this was just a white background, it would take me probably an extra hour or two to just build the depth that it gives. So on her shoulder, you can see the way I do these thin layers is very watery, thin layers, and I keep the red showing through in certain areas as highlights, and that kind of like just builds up over time. So even this early on, getting these values in makes it go a lot faster. This one was a little bit quicker because a lot of it really is just background. I mean, it's a lot of white sort of lines and stuff. So, I mean, of course, the real detail is her and her face, so the background isn't as important. For this one, the reference I used, I basically took a bunch of screenshots from the scene in the movie and kind of photoshopped them together. Like I cut the axe and the door and kind of like pulled it closer in frame, and then I kind of put her behind it. Just it's not exactly how it looks in the movie, obviously. I wanted to do an illustration version, which is why I added the window in the background. If you know the scene, she gets Danny out of the window first and he slides down the snow, and then she tries to fit out the window, but she can't fit, so she's stuck in there as he's chopping through the door. So I wanted to show the window in the back there. That's something, as an illustrator, you have to think about the entire story or just scene that you're working on, just to allude to things without being too heavy-handed, I suppose. It's a little bit hard to see, but I do have a sketch under painting, a sketch there. It's just that it's more of a guide for me. I don't really use it too much. I use it just to make sure I'm getting my composition right. Otherwise, I keep making mistakes as I go over it with paint, and I keep fixing it, and it's really just, it gets fixed after I keep building it up, so that the sketch becomes basically useless after this first stage of painting here. Oh, also, I just want to mention, I did edit this video slightly, but the only thing I edited was just some parts where there was a long gap of no movement or anything, just to trim some of the fat, you know. Teeth are something that is super hard to get right. I feel like it's one of the hardest things to make look natural and not scary or too white or too yellow or too weird, or the lines between them too dark. They're definitely a difficult piece. I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about that enough. Everybody else talks about hands, but teeth are hard. Face is usually where I spend the most time in my paintings, of course. I want to make sure I'm getting a likeness, and at least for paintings that I'm doing based on a real person. A lot of my other paintings are just not real people, compositions of people, or just, you know, or they're old photos of people that I'm not trying to get them to look like the person that I'm painting. I do my own sort of version of that. But for this one, I had to spend some more time getting the details right in her face to make sure it looked like the person I'm trying to depict here. I have to say, the scariest part really is just this beginning part, because even I look at this and I'm like, how do I turn this into something good? But I don't know. I just keep going. It's basically, I just consider it, I just make a lot of mistakes until it looks right. And then I just say that I'm done. By the way, guys, if you see anything in this video or you have questions at any point, just leave a comment, let me know. If it's something I can make a video on, I want to try to do that. I'm still kind of trying to figure out what kind of content I want to stick with here. I like to do my time lapses. Just not quite sure what other people are looking for. My style of painting is a little bit more advanced than I would say for beginners. I don't really know how to teach beginners, I would say, besides maybe just keep watching me, learn from just watching, I would say, because my experience, I have years and years of experience in all different mediums, and everything combined, I think, is why my style is what it is today. It took me 20 years to build this style, is basically what I'm saying. A lot of it comes from, I work a lot in markers, blending markers. I work in watercolors, gouache, oil paint. I've done sculpting. I work digitally. Pretty much everything you can think of, and all of those things combined have brought me to where I am today with my art. So it's not super easy to get there, but it's just that's what being an artist is. It's just you're always evolving and changing, and no one has a pace. You don't have to go at a specific pace to be successful, or I worked in graphic design for like 10 years. T-shirt design, I was a t-shirt designer. I was a product designer and toy designer. I did a lot of apparel, and what else did I do? Just a lot of stuff like that. I did packaging design, which I actually really enjoy that part. I still do my own packaging for stuff that I sell on Etsy and in my shop. But it took me years to even realize I wanted to just be a painter, and that's only a recent discovery, because for years I tried to fit into the boxes of what kind of artist I could be in the capitalist world, and that was being a graphic designer and working for big companies and selling your soul, basically. Boring stuff. It had its moments. There were some really fun times I had in those jobs, and I learned a lot from them. I wouldn't trade that for anything, but it wasn't me. I just wasn't very good at it. I think I was good at it. I work in New York City for some big companies, but I didn't have the passion behind it. So I think that would come through in my work sometimes, because I just didn't care enough about it, honestly. But once I started putting in the work into my own work, it started really clicking even more. Even though I've been doing this my entire life, I always thought the only way to monetize it was through working for other people, and I'm just realizing that's not really for me. I would also like to do some other videos in different mediums if you guys are interested in anything specific. Really anything. I would love to do oil, but it's been kind of a while, and I also don't know if I really have the space to kind of set up for that, but maybe. It's just kind of messy, and it's just a whole other process of painting, but I can do watercolors, I can do gouache. What else do I have? I don't even know. Anything pencils? I don't really work in pencils too much. I can, but not my preferred medium. Alright, so we've passed kind of our underpainting, and now I'm starting to add in more highlights, which seems like a giant mess. So you can see I use a lot of water. I tend to go in, basically I paint on the canvas, and I know that a lot of artists don't like doing that or whatever, but that's just how I work. So I kind of go in with a really light color and then just like water it down and then blend. So this is where I'm saying when it comes to my experience with other mediums, this is how I would work with a gouache, probably very thin blended layers like this, and somehow I kind of just adapted it into my acrylic style. So you can also see here with her shirt, the red coming through there is still coming through. Like, it's a whole layer of color that I didn't have to do anything to work for. And you can see that on her face as well. So at this point, we're only about 20 minutes into this painting or so. And you can already see how much shape it has. One thing I will say is I tend to use brushes that are way too small for the areas that I'm working on. It does give the very like brushy look that I have, but for time reasons and other, aesthetic other reasons, you might want to use a larger brush for areas that are like this. You can kind of see how I build around the window where it's darker around the edges, and I keep the blue I had underneath that kind of glowing through. In that scene, there's a big bright white like street light type thing outside glowing on the snow, and everything looks kind of blue and white and washed out. Some highlights on the axe here. I wanted the axe to sort of have a little bit of a almost like a blur-ish look, kind of like there's movement there. You can see how my edges, I kind of leave them a little messy. So I think I've mentioned this before, but the reason I kind of jump around a lot while I'm painting is because I wait for certain areas to dry more. Like the window up there I just worked on, I'm going to want to layer that again, but I have to wait for that to dry because it just blends differently. Like, I want my paint to go over the dry paint. I don't want it to blend with the paint, if you know what I mean. So yeah, here I'm going back to this area now. I think I originally was going to do kind of more of a reddish orange color behind her, but I think it ends up being kind of a yellow, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's like a yellowish. So yeah, a lot of times I'll go in with kind of a bright, I think this is one of my golden fluid paints, which are super opaque, thin paints. And these ones I really love to kind of put on very like thick color, and then I take white or water, white paint, or mix both with water, and just kind of blend it together, almost like a dry brushing over it. It's a little bit hard to explain how I do some of my technique because I kind of go back and forth between using very, very wet, watery paint and then going over that with sort of more dry brushing, and I kind of go back and forth with those techniques. This is the door that I'm building up here. I think I wasn't quite sure how it was going to look at this point, but I just kind of was filling in this space. Okay, then I tend to go back again with my reds and magentas to add more depth on top of usually skin, at least white person skin, or it depends on the person's skin tone, but I like to bring out more of that red in there. So you can see how I blend on the canvas. Well, I keep calling it a canvas, but it's wood. But anyway, so I put this thick layer of red around her eye, and then I take white, or a mixed white, not fully white, but maybe a mix with a little bit of yellow, and then I just blend it together on the board. It's definitely a technique that takes some time to learn how to do well, but you just got to practice. So with my layers, you can see I never fully do opaque layers. They're all just super thin. I just keep layering and layering, and you can still see underneath, unless I really want to cover something up, which I can also do. Wasn't super happy with how the hand came out, but I kind of just did this as a quick painting. Wasn't really meant to be anything too serious. Another reason I wanted to do this painting was I am a huge horror movie fan. It's actually, horror movies are a huge inspiration for me, art-wise, and movies in general. I just find it a really cool way to tell stories. I love really beautiful cinematography and photo design and that kind of stuff in movies and direction, and I like beautiful movies. I like scary movies that are beautiful. I love movies like a lot of the A24 stuff, Hereditary, Ari Aster stuff. Classics like The Shining, of course. Just everything really, but it does inspire me. I like the weird, gritty stuff from the 80s. I like more psychological stuff. But a lot of movies have really interesting lighting. Horror movies are dark lighting. I've always been drawn to kind of night scenes and interesting lighting, so that's what I think I'm mostly drawn to. Also subject matter as well. A lot of my stuff tends to be dark to some extent. Okay, here you can see me using my palette knife to scrape off some bump that was probably there. So I like to work pretty flat. I used to work a lot more texture-wise, with a lot of texture, but I don't know, over time I just kind of thinned out my paintings a little bit. So I tend to, if I ever get lumps that dry, I go in with my palette knife and scrape them off and just paint right over it. Which is another thing you can't really do on canvas with the palette knife, because I can really dig in on this board without it, really ruining anything. On a canvas, it will damage the canvas, so it's just a little bit easier to kind of manhandle. Okay, I think at this point possibly is when I worked on it at night for an hour, and then I was too tired to finish it, so I came back in the morning to finish it, and I think this is the next morning now, so we're at day 2, hour 2. Kind of reinforcing the highlights of certain things. One thing I like to do with lighting, so you'll see I'm adding this kind of white highlight above her head. You want to kind of draw the viewer's eye to the most important areas. So I want there to be sort of some brighter highlights behind her face, and also kind of down where I'm doing it, where the axe is, it's going to kind of, you want to draw people in a certain direction. You want them to see the face first, and then they look down at that axe down there, and then you see the window. You want them to see it in that order. So think of your subjects as what is the most important thing in my scene right here. What's second most important, third most important, however you want to do it. And I tend to, you can also, to help that kind of thing, is you can blur objects that are either in the front or behind the subject a little bit. Around this stage is when I start getting in a lot of my darker colors, shadows here. So here I want to add some blue to the axe here, kind of ties things together a little bit. At this point, I'm taking it a little slow on the face because this is where you really have to look at your reference and make sure I'm making it look like her. This part will take me quite a while to get right, but it is a process of building it up. I believe at this point her nostrils are all messed up. I'll fix that as I go along. It's kind of just I just work in little segments here and there, and then I go back and forth and look back and make sure I'm getting it all right. Yeah, I full on erased her nostrils basically. So that's why it's not as scary as it seems to make mistakes. You just have to keep trying. If you really need to at this point, you can go over painting with pencil. If I wanted to fix something and I really was having a hard time, I would just trace it back over the painting and try again. I don't really need to do that as much anymore, but there have been times where I've had to do that. Somehow you just mess it up so bad, and you gotta kind of just start from scratch a little bit. This point really is where I start to make sure I'm getting all of my lines right, my details, everything where it needs to be. mentioned this before, I think, but my palette is the Stay Wet palette by Masterson's. It comes with a little lid on top, and you basically soak a flat sponge and you put it underneath the palette, and then you have a special kind of paper that you also soak in water, and then you put your paint on there, and then it stays wet for several days. You can kind of keep re-wetting it for a little longer, but eventually it gets a little dried out, so you want to replace it. But it saves me a ton of paint. It lasts between paintings, and really I would have gone through way more paint by now if I didn't have this thing, because I tend to work in like short bursts. This painting is kind of an exception because I kind of did this one really quickly, but typically when I'm working on a regular painting, I will work sometimes for 10 minutes and then get totally distracted or don't feel like painting at the moment, so I can just put my stuff away and I don't have to worry about it drying out, and I don't have to worry about setting up every time I start. I only have to set up every other time with the paint, or even less than that, really. And that helps motivate too, because I don't have to spend 15 minutes every time trying to set up my workspace. I can just kind of just start most of the time now that I have a little bit of a better setup. Okay, kind of adding the frostiness to the window. For the door, I wanted to give it a little bit more of a reddish hue. Kind of just, Jack is scary, red is scary, bloody. Just kind of signifies that fear. Keep layering over this, I think, because it was a little darker than I had wanted it to be, so I realized I needed it to be a lot lighter. You can see how I blend on the wall here. I don't really care about it getting onto her head because I'm going to do that last, fix her hair and stuff. It's just easier to get the background and not have to worry about ending. You don't want your line to end awkwardly at a spot like the hair. For one, you'll get lumps, and two, it'll just be kind of obvious. you want the flow to keep going. You want your hand to just flow. You don't want it to look like you stifled, and you just want to keep going. Trying to get some darker shadows at the bottom here. At a certain point like this with the purple here, I like to go over whole areas with kind of a thin layer of a color, just to kind of, I think it helps it sort of help everything mesh together a little bit better. This was kind of a difficult area. It was a little bit, I wasn't sure how to go about it. It's just kind of an awkward area. Her hair was kind of covering it in parts, and it's like a turtleneck, so it's just kind of an odd thing to paint, I think. But I eventually got it. Using a little bit of purple here to put in her face. It's another way of kind of getting the whole painting to kind of look like it works together, is having like a little bit of each color almost in every section in a way. Here I'm adding the red onto the door. You can kind of see how I'm using the red in this sort of directional way, where it leads you to the axe from the top down. And then I'm also going to add red into her clothing and kind of pull that together. Oh, here I decided to pour some paint just directly onto the canvas, or onto the board. That is a golden fluid. It's one of the thinner fluid ones. It's like a fluorescent blue. And you can see right here as it goes on, it looks really white, but actually it's bubbles for the most part. And that eventually, that once those pop, it kind of darkens in color a little bit. And I also continue to add water as well. Kind of thins it out even more. I like to do this when I want kind of like a foggy look on windows or just backgrounds in general. I kind of let the water just do its thing and drip down a little bit. So yeah, I'm also going to add some of that blue down at the bottom here. Kind of mimics the window. Kind of encloses her into that space in the middle there. The door was a little bit difficult because it was kind of like trying to figure out how to make it not look like just a rectangle. I think it ended up working out all right. So yeah, you can see I'm also doing this with the white here where I kind of, I'm drawing your eye down into the axe there. It's very subtle, but when you see it being blended in, you can really see how that works. This point is where I decided to go a little more heavy with the yellow behind her because I wanted the door to stand out a little bit more and be white there, and just kind of decided on yellow to fill in that area. I like my bright colors. Could have gone with the green, but I don't know, I wanted the bright color there. I do dull it down a bit though. I was having some issues with her shape a little bit. I was trying to reshape her back. I think it was just kind of an awkward kind of camera angle, I guess, that I was working from. So I was trying to fix that a bit. Okay, now I'm adding, I think this is probably one of my final washes on this side here, maybe. I don't know, I usually go back over stuff a million times, so I don't know. But yeah, you can see I like to leave things a little wet and drip down on their own and just see where it goes. Now I'm adding more white and more yellow into the door, kind of warming it up now a little bit. Decided to give this a little more of a textury look to it, more of a frosty look. All right, so around this point, there's about 30 minutes left of the work here. Not really sure what else to say about it at this point, so I'm probably going to end this here soon. At this point, near the end, is when I kind of go pretty quickly and get the rest of my details in, get all my colors down where I want them to be. Really just finishing it up at this point. Adding smaller details, making sure I'm layering more colors around. So here I'm adding more red to the background, just kind of, melting everything together in a sense. And then eventually I'll go back into her face and finish that up and the rest of it. So yeah, hope you like this one. If there's anything else you would like me to talk about, let me know. Or if there's something I missed and I didn't talk about, let me know in the comments. And I will try to make a video about it. I have a couple more of these videos hopefully coming soon. I have about 4 paintings I think I'm behind on time-lapse videos. And I started a new one. So I'm a little behind on that. It's mostly because I'm just not quite sure what direction I want to go with my videos in terms of editing and content and stuff. So it would be really helpful if you guys had some more input on that and just let me know what you want to see. I'll do my best to share what I can. And yeah, so just hope you enjoy the rest of this video, and I'll see you guys soon.